Hi, welcome to our video lesson for today, Tuesday, March 24th. We're going to talk a little bit about biomes. I'm going to show you some different pictures of some different biomes. I hope you liked watching some of those videos yesterday and saw some good predator-prey interactions. I always think those are neat to watch. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to bring up the PowerPoint. So we're on Roman numeral 5, terrestrial ecosystems. So terrestrial just means land. So these are different land ecosystem. So biome is a very large terrestrial ecosystem that contains a number of smaller but related ecosystems. Biomes have characteristic plants and animals that are in those specific biomes. The change between biomes is gradual, so there's no exact boundaries. So going from a savanna to a desert, it's not there's an exact fence or line there. It's just kind of a gradual change from one to the next. So depending on what book you look at, there's different names for some of these biomes, but these are the main 7 major biomes that we can find. And we're going to start at the top, so think like towards the North Pole, and then we're going to go towards the equator, kind of working our way from the north down to the south. So if we start at the top, the tundra is very cold, largely treeless because it's such a short growing season that it doesn't have time for big trees to grow. So there's lots of small vegetation. For all these, I'm just going to do a real basic overview, and then I'm going to show you some pictures and talk a little bit more about it as well. So there's not a lot of notes to take on each biome. Next level down, so our tundra was more like Alaska, northern Russia, those types of places. If we go a little bit further south, we get to the taiga. So think of Canada, the northern parts of the United States. Even parts of the UP would be considered taiga. It's forested areas with cone-bearing evergreen trees. So think of Christmas trees. These would be forested areas where we would have deer and things like that. Lots of birds, but evergreen trees. Moving further down, now this gets into Wisconsin. This is the temperate deciduous forest. Deciduous trees are trees that lose their leaves in fall. So maple trees, oak trees, your typical forest animals would be in a deciduous forest. Temperate grasslands are dominated by grasses, as the name would say. They're usually found in the interior of continents. So think of prairies or the Great Plains of the United States. So states like Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, those would all have been grasslands before it was settled and turned into farmland. Deserts are areas that receive less than 9.9 inches of rainfall per year. We usually think of sandy deserts, but as just areas that don't get much rainfall. Sometimes deserts can be very hot during the day and cold at night. There's actually some deserts that are very cold year-round. It's just based on rainfall. Savannas are the tropical or subtropical grasslands with scattered trees and shrubs. We think of the African savanna, where we've got the elephants and zebras, all the grazing animals, lots of grasses, but not many trees, just scattered trees. Savannas typically have a wet season and a dry season. And our last one, as we get to the equator, are the tropical rainforests. These are the tall trees, lots of plant life. Near the equator, lots of rainfall, a great diversity of plants and animals because there is so much rainfall. All right, so let's take a look at a few pictures. Some of these I just found online. Many of them, though, I did take from pictures that either I have taken or my husband has taken while on various trips. So the first picture is Mount McKinley. This is in Denali National Park, which is in Alaska. The picture out in front here shows you tundra. So no trees, you can see for miles. Mount McKinley is in the distance, about 30 miles away, but notice lack of trees. Sometimes higher elevations, like Rocky Mountain National Park, when you climb a mountain, when you get so high, you get to the point where there are no trees as well. So you can see the vegetation here. Taiga, again, we have the evergreen trees here. This is in Glacier National Park in Montana. Temperate deciduous forests. So this is right here in Wisconsin. So Point Beach State Forest and Two Rivers. This is showing the deciduous trees changing their colors. Temperate grasslands, these I just got online. So typically today it's farmed or pastures. Here's more what a natural prairie or grassland would look like. Again, no trees, lots of grasses. Desert can be your typical sandy deserts or a rocky, dry area like Arches National Park. These I've just found online. Your typical savanna. We've got the giraffes and the zebras at a watering hole, the elephant. Notice in the distance here, we can see a scattering of trees, but again, it's mostly grasses. Tropical rainforest, this was from Belize in Central America. Notice how you can't see very far. There's just lots of vegetation, lots of trees, lots of green. Costa Rica rainforest, again, notice all of the vegetation. You can't see very far because you have all the trees. It's actually raining in this picture. Lots of tropical plants, lots of animals. One that we didn't list in our notes was just to put in glacier or polar regions. This is, we were on a boat trip in Seward, Alaska, a small boat. We went into this little bay. This was in July. Notice all the ice chunks in the water. This was a glacier. Right here, we're probably about a mile or so away from the glacier. Pieces would actually break off and really loud and would come into the water. So that's why all these ice chunks were here. Lots of animals too, lots of birds. We saw seals. We saw a humpback whale. So lots of animals in here as well. All right, now moving on to aquatic ecosystems. So ocean zone make up 70% of the earth. Average depth, about 2.3 miles. Deepest parts are over 6 miles deep in some different trenches. Water contains about 3% salt and varying amounts of light. So ocean water, of course, has salt in it. So areas that have light are called the photic zone. Think photosynthesis. So photo is for light, part of the ocean that receives sunlight. So here's where we're going to have lots of different plants and algae, coral reefs, lots of fish and plant, animal life, marine life will be in the photic zone. Aphotic zone, put the A in front. It means where it doesn't receive sunlight. So when we get so deep, the light cannot get through all of that water. So there are still things that live there, but they're not going to be able to do photosynthesis because they do not have sunlight. So if we start on the beach and kind of make our way out from land out into the ocean, the first part are the intertidal zones as pictured up here. They're along the ocean shores. Tides produce rise and fall of water. So sometimes these areas are completely covered with water and other times they're completely open to the air. So the plants and organisms have to be able to survive in both. The Nordic zone is from the intertidal to the continental shelf. This is usually the shallow area. So if you've ever gone swimming in the ocean, played off the beach, this is what you'd be swimming in, the Nordic zone. And then the ocean zone is beyond the continental shelf. This is getting into the deep water. So some of the cruise ships might go way out into the ocean zone, but typically you're not going to swim out into the ocean zone on your own. So here's just a picture. So here's our intertidal zone along the coast. We have our photic zone where sunlight can hit. As we get deep, we get into the aphotic zone and to the open ocean. Just a few more pictures. I've done lots of snorkeling. So this is off the coast of St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So here's some brain coral, some elkhorn coral. Coral is actually an animal, not a plant. There's actually little living animals inside here. They make kind of a hard structure here, more like rock, but there's actually living organisms on top of that. So it's actually an animal, not a plant. Here's just a jellyfish and some squid. Again, these would all be in the photic zone, just right off in that Nordic zone where you'd be swimming. The other butterfly fish, a stingray, notice the sand, the light is coming through. Here's just some coastal regions where you can see the beach and then the water coming out. This is Trunk Bay and St. John in the Virgin Islands. The darker area is going to be coral reef. This was actually a little bungalow that we stayed in on an island in Belize, so right next to the water. Beautiful place. Then estuaries are where freshwater rivers flow into the ocean. So we have a meeting of freshwater and saltwater. So there's variations in the amount of saltwater and freshwater in these locations. They could be shallow, but it could also change with tides as the tide comes in. So plants and animals that live here have to be able to change with changing conditions, different salt conditions, different depths. One plant that does really well in estuaries are mangrove trees. They have adaptations that allow them to take up salt water and to eliminate the salt. They can take it up through their roots and actually get rid of the salt. Sometimes they put some of the salt in a couple of leaves that then they would discard. So here's a picture in the Florida Keys. There are a lot of mangrove trees. You can see their roots kind of extending out. Here in Belize, there's a whole grove of them. Their roots are extending down into the water, but very dense, kind of waxy leaves. They do very well in salt water. And our last area is freshwater zone. So freshwater rivers and lakes, low levels of salt, 0.005% salt. So lakes and ponds would be in this category. We can categorize our lakes by two different types. Eutrophic, which means they're rich in organic matter, so living things, lots of vegetation. The water might be kind of murky, but it's good for fish, but maybe not so good to swim in because there's a lot of organic matter, a lot of algae. Oligotrophic have little organic matter. The water is pretty clear, but maybe not as good for fishing, better for swimming because you don't have as much plant material or algae growing in the water. Rivers and streams are waters that flow down a gradient or slope towards its mouth. Again, just a couple of pictures. You've all seen freshwater rivers. So here's one in Florence County, Wisconsin. Here we've got the huge Lake Michigan right in our backyard. So this is Sleeping Bear Dunes on the Michigan side. So you can see Lake Michigan out. All right, so that's where we're going to stop with our notes. We're all finished with our notes for this chapter. So what you're going to do now, you can do your daily question. And then there's also some questions in an assignment box. So you can do both of those. The remaining of the week, we'll post what the biome project is going to be. I'll do a little video the next day to tell you what that's going to be. And we'll give you several days to work on that. So you're going to make your own little zoo. So I will explain all of that. We'll review then on Monday. And we're going to do our first online test on Tuesday. So I'll tell you all about how we're going to do that. I'll make some videos on that so you can follow along. So again, just finish up your daily question and the question box, and then you're all done for today. Have a great rest of your day.